department. And Miss O'Leary, in her function in this community, only has praise for her and her efforts and what she has done in providing an outlet and an opportunity, a safety net for the youth of this community. I, for one, am in support of funding it, and at a minimum, support placing it on the town warrant.
Thank you, Mr. Delaney. Mr. Vino?
Yes, I will go forward, Mr. Chair. First of all, I want to say this is one of the tough decisions that sometimes a Board of Selectmen member has to make. I've taken all the emotions out of it, and I've looked at it financially. I guess the emotional aspect could go either way. I've taken that out of it. I have not changed my position, and that does not mean I am opposed, I don't mean anything negative towards Miss O'Leary or her department or her job. Maybe I get spoken to as a member of the board by many more town employees, shall I say, and citizens than other people. In a lot of people's opinion, and in mine, this is taking on a new employee when we have a hiring freeze. Unfortunately, when this position was created approximately 2 years ago, we knew we were going to be in a bad position when this happened, when the funding ran out. I don't think any of us knew we were going to be in this bad of a position. I've actually had people say to me, I took a 0% raise, and now the town is looking at putting on a new employee. I have to listen to that. I have to listen to both sides. I went into this with an open mind a year and a half ago. But we're at that point where a very hard decision has to be made. And I just cannot support it. I have a number of questions if it does go through. That is the Youth Service Committee still going to be in charge of Miss O'Leary? We're going to have a town employee that is overseen by a non-even elected or appointed group. This is if it does go forward. I don't want to belabor the point because I don't want to sound negative on the program. I'm not negative on the program, but I just cannot see the town picking it up at this point. Or when we do our next budget, we have to take $60,000 from somewhere to fund this. And we may have future cuts. We've heard that said earlier in the evening. So I unfortunately, I could leave it on. I could leave it on the town meeting warrant. I could do that. I would rather not, but I could leave it on there. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Yule?
Yes. Joe, if I may ask, you could leave it on, does that mean that you would go in that direction, or are you looking to still be persuaded?
No, let me explain that. I would not be upset if the majority of the board wanted to leave it on there. I mean, it'd be a majority decision.
Put it on. It
Put it on.
hasn't been put on yet.
Right.
It's not even there yet.
Yeah, I'm sorry. If they wanted to put it on, if I had my choice, I would say no.
Okay. Very tough process here, a difficult decision. And it's very heart-wrenching to know that whatever decision you make, it's going to be a decision for one group versus another group. And so it's going to benefit someone and it's going to hurt someone. And we can't predict what's going to happen. There are no guarantees in this, in youth services. With all the great job that the youth services director has been doing, there's still no guarantees that we can maintain the program. I do have a question on the approach right now. I believe that we're looking at $35,000 to get us to June 30th. Is that what we're looking for, or are we actually looking to make this a completely permanent job from here on in?
The amount of funding required to fund through the end of the fiscal year is $35,000.
Okay. And what is our intent as a board? at that point is to consider whether to continue it as an employee, or are we going to, if we don't have the funds, are we going to end the program now?
First of all, I had asked, I think at our last meeting, certainly if it wasn't at the meeting, it was afterward, to ask the Narissa group who initiated the program and have been funding it. By the way, it was a town meeting approval of the program at the time, to put together a 5-year plan as to where we're going with this. I think certainly think it's a worthwhile cause, or I wouldn't be bringing the subject up this evening. I think they need some time to put a plan together. I think that by funding it for this year and working with them to see what this program should look like going out, and can we get it to a point where, like recreation has over time begun to fund itself, can we get to a point where this program can fund itself, or at least keep the cost down to just a single salary position? Right now, it is raising money to fund some of its programs. My proposal is that we fund this from new revenue, meaning that in order to fund this, we need to pass the meals tax. And my answer to town employees that are concerned about it is I made a commitment, and we made a commitment to our town employees, if they would take a salary freeze, that we would work hard not to lay anybody off. And I view this as, if we don't fund it, that individual will be laid off. And I'm absolutely convinced, as Mr. Delaney has elaborated, that the program has a significant value to the youth of the community, and I would like to continue the program and wrestle with how to keep it funded going forward. But I would not support funding the program if, in fact, we don't raise that additional revenue, and that's one of the reasons why I'm in support of the meals tax. I don't know if that
Well,
answers your question.
it kind of does. I don't know when they're going, Narissa will have and I presume it's Narissa that will present us with a 5-year plan. That's very important. I did meet with Narissa, with Youth Services this evening, and I expressed my feeling that many of these programs are best run philanthropically. And that means you have to raise funds, and you have to, in an economy that is very difficult, people have to prioritize, and they're not sure. They have to make a decision, which program they're going to support. So it's a very difficult time to do that, but these programs are still best functioning independent of what I would call government intervention, for lack of a better word. Is there a need in the town? I'm sure there is. If there's one person that needs it, then there's a need. But we have many other programs that we have to consider. We have to consider about school, we have to, and teachers, and the library, and there are numerous things. Now, it was brought to my attention that we had a youth services some years ago, which I did not know. And that program was shut down for whatever reasons, I'm not sure, but it was shut down, and except for the fact that it may not have been, eventually got out of hand as a program, and I'm not suggesting that would happen here. This program can only grow. And that's kind of a good news, bad news scenario, because if it grows, that means we have a lot more problems than we realize, and if it doesn't grow, then we're doing pretty well, it would appear, okay? As far as it being on the warrant at this time, I'm still wrestling with this. I mean, it's an emotional drain. If I can be assured that this is only, from our perspective, is only going to go to June 30th, and that what I would be looking for from Narissa is even before the town meeting, I'd like to see the 5-year plan, and I'd like to see how they're going to grow the organization. When I met with them several weeks ago, I wanted to know, what is their vision, not only of helping children, but what is their vision of Narissa growing in such a way, adding people and revenue, so that they can make this program function. And I'd like them to be so successful that the town is not involved in it. I prefer it to be philanthropic. So if you're saying to me that this is to go to June 30th, they ought to come up with a plan that hopefully the board, not just me, but the board in general, can either approve or disapprove, then I'd be inclined to go in that direction.
Oh, I'd like to clarify a couple of things. First of all, we approve budgets annually. So, yeah, this is, the request here is to fund it for this fiscal year. We will then go through another budget process for 2011 and so on and so forth. Now, one of the things that I think there's a little bit of a misconception here. First of all, at the insistence of Narissa, back 2 years ago, or 2.5 years ago, the Youth Services is a department of the town of North Reading. The Youth Services Director reports to the town administrator, not to Narissa. I view Narissa similar to the Friends of the Council on Aging. They are nothing more than a support group. They don't give the orders, they don't make the decisions. They help in the form of support. So in the process of asking for a 5-year plan, it's basically asking Youth Services for a 5-year plan. Narissa can contribute certainly to that plan, but I think we need to make that clear. Right? We're not funding Narissa, we're funding Youth Services Department, which is previously established in the town of North Reading and reports to the town administrator.
I just think it's important to understand that what you're proposing, Mr. Chairman, is one mechanism by which it could possibly be funded. But if we put it on the warrant, it provides a wide open door as to how it will be funded. Town meeting in their wisdom could decide to just do it out of raise and appropriate, taking it out of the stabilization fund, take it out of free cash, take it out of any other place, rather than just earmarking potential increased revenues from a source of funds that doesn't currently exist. While that might be your intent, what we would be doing is providing other mechanisms by which this position would be funded through tax dollars that we currently have, and which are very precious to us right now. So that I would be concerned with putting it on the warrant unless the majority of the board is in favor of retaining the position, funding it within the general operating budget, which is what's being asked. If the majority of the board wants to do that, then do it. But if we're going to be dancing around this thing, and again, asking the town meeting to make a determination on our wish to use this source of funding, which they may not buy into, they may agree with Mr. Lee. That we don't want to raise the meals tax in North Reading. So that revenue source that you're proposing dries up. Does the position disappear? No, because it's still in the warrant, and we take it out of free cash, or we take it out of the stabilization fund, or we take it out of some other place. I too have been wrestling with this. First of all, from a timing standpoint, we've been put in a very difficult position because here it is October, and in August we were informed that the money was running out and we need $40,000 in order to continue this position for the remainder of the year. There wasn't any discussion during our budgetary process for April town meeting to fund this position under the general operating expenses. We didn't have the discussion as to whether or not we were going to bring it under the umbrella at that particular time, which would have been the most appropriate time, rather than putting it on our table here, in the late summer months, 6 weeks before an October town meeting. So it wasn't part of the game plan, first and foremost, as far as the funding of it. Again, the department's done a wonderful job, Jenny's done a wonderful job, Narissa's done a wonderful job. The program seems to be bearing some fruit, and and it's a great thing, and it's my understanding with a conversation with the